I am Suvrat, co-founder of Chariot. It's an immense privilege to stand behind this incredible audience of students, researchers, founders, and policymakers. At Chariot, we're proud to be one of the companies mandated to build frontier models for India under the India AI mission to build sovereign frontier models for the country. But as we embark on this journey, we must recognize a fundamental truth. Building true frontier intelligence from India is a monumental ecosystem play. We cannot simply import models and talents, run them on borrowed infrastructure, and call them our own. If we want to solve India-scale problems at population scale, we must own the power, the hardware, and the talent and the research that drives them. That is the thesis of today's session, India's path to an AGI-enabling ecosystem, to bridge the gap between energy, infrastructure, and research. We have brought together the absolute pioneers of this field. Before we begin, let me quickly share our roadmap for the next 1 hour. We will start by inviting each of our distinguished speakers to share opening remarks on their respective domains. After that, we will dive into a panel discussion. And then finally, we will open the floor for your questions. To guide through this, we have assembled the absolute pioneers of energy, compute, and research pillars. Today, we are joined by Shri Ghanshyam Prasad ji, Chairperson of Central Electricity Authority, Mr. Tarun Dua, Founder and Managing Director of E2E Networks, Professor Jayadeva, GSV Chair and former HOD of Electrical Engineering at IIT Delhi, and finally my co-founder at Chariot, Mr. Parth Sarthi. To build this ecosystem from ground up, starting with the very power that makes this revolution possible, energy. To speak on the sheer scale of this transition and to help us answer critical questions, such as what we expect AI's true energy demand in the country to be, and how are we preparing and modeling our national grid to meet it, I would like to introduce a true veteran of the power sector, Shri Ghanshyam Prasad ji. Shri Ghanshyam Prasad ji presently holds the post of Chairperson of Central Electricity Authority. With an illustrious career spanning over 35 years, his expertise covers generation, transmission, and power market development. Having served as part of the G20 Energy Transition Working Group and the first executive director of BIMSTEC Energy Center, his global perspective and visionary leadership are ensuring our grid is ready for the AI era. Please join me in welcoming Shri Ghanshyam Prasad to the dais for his opening remarks.
Good morning everyone. All the dignitaries sitting on the dais and off the dais. Let me at the outset thank Chariot for inviting me to be a part of this particular very, very important session and almost the guiding force which is happening for the last 3-4 days in India. I think the speaker wanted me to speak on some of the key challenges that is likely to happen in the era when we are transiting from the present situation to AI-enabled or AI-driven power system. We all know that the moment we talk about AI, which means that it is supposed to be data intensive and it is to be a power juggler. And we are talking about the data centers, which will try to enable it as we go along. In India, we are now transiting from a smaller data centers. Earlier, we used to have 10 megawatt, 50 megawatt data centers to now gigawatt scale data centers at many places, particularly in Mumbai, Vizag, Chennai, and all other places. So far, we have a visibility of around 16 gigawatt of such data centers coming in across India. The challenge remains a few, particularly if I see from the perspective of serving a large load, which earlier we thought that it is going to be almost like a constant load, but practically it is not. And if it is not, then how do we manage such type of a variable load? So far we were struggling with only variable sources, that is solar, wind, etc. Now we are going to have something from the load side as well. a large load getting integrated into the DISCOM system, and which is also going to have a nature which is going to be variable. Second is the kind of reliability that it demands into the system. The reliability is, we talk about n+1+1 now, which means that the same data center will have to be supplied from two different sources, and they have to be slightly differently located as well. Second is, even if the supply fails, then it has to be backed up simultaneously by two, I'll say two steps, that is DG sets, and each DG set will have to be backed up by another DG sets. So we have almost four layer of security of supply. It's definitely challenging for a country like India, which is now expanding and growing, to provide such kind of a reliability. But still, we are geared to meet this kind of a challenge. Some of you who have not seen a data centers, I'll request you, it's very close to Delhi. It's in Noida, which is coming up. That is 50 megawatt data center being built by Adani and would be operated by Google. 10 megawatt has already been commissioned, and rest 40 megawatt is in the pipeline. You can see the structure that is coming and the kind of challenges it is facing. But still, I must congratulate UP DISCOM, who have been able to provide this kind of a reliable supply to that data centers. But this is 50 megawatt, but very soon you will find a data center coming in Mumbai area, which will be of 1,000 megawatt, Vizag, which may be even more than 1,000 megawatt. 1,000 megawatt, the moment I say it, means the supply that will be required to this particular center will be at least 1.7 times. That's the near thumb rule. It may require, I think, sir is saying that it will be required 2 times at least. But data center which I visited has been designed for 1.7 times of the data center's capacity. So the challenges, first is, how do I maintain a variable load? How do I meet the n+1+1 criteria of supply? Some of you researchers who are sitting here probably must be aware about these kind of things before we try to design this kind of a thing. What is furthermore going to be more challenging is, because these data centers are also planning to go green. That means, had they taken a mixed supply, probably the challenge of DISCOM would have been slightly lesser. But if you want to classify yourself exactly green data centers, then that means I need to ensure you that only green power flows into your data center, which means a combination of solar, wind, battery, hydro pump storage, or any such type of a combination, which we'll be able to ensure to you. And that means I need to ensure a transmission line from such sources to your place, so that at least there is no interruptions in the supply of green power being provided to you. But let me assure you that India is geared up for that kind of a challenge, because we have started the journey of energy transition somewhere in 2011 or 10, wherein we started with a meager figure of somewhere around 2 gigawatt. Now we are more than 50% in terms of renewable in the country, surpassing 250 gigawatt, and which has majority share coming from the solar and then from wind, and storage is now kicking into the system. Last year we surpassed 30 gigawatt in a single year. This year, in just 10 months, starting from April till January, we have already crossed 40,000 megawatt, which means that probably in this particular year we will have more than 50 gigawatt coming in a single year. So even if the data centers or the AI-driven systems demand green power, I think the country is geared up to that kind of a challenge. Further, what we are suggesting to the data centers is, please try to have a diversity Diversity means don't have at a single location. Try to be as close to RE locations as possible, slightly away from the main town, and diversified locations. So far, we have 2 landing points in the country. It is Mumbai and Chennai, but we are trying to diversify that as well. So we can have multiple landing points in the country so that the data centers can come at multiple locations, and so that at least the challenges of the discoms will get diversified. Coming back to the further stability, and since I have been asked for the international scenario as well, so India is also connected to Nepal, Bhutan, Bangladesh, and to some extent to Myanmar, and we are also promoting to very soon connect with UAE and Saudi Arabia and Singapore and even Sri Lanka. So if the moment we are going towards the other countries, that means we'll try to have both, not only power, but we'll try to have the communication network as well. And there are situations which is emerging that maybe these countries will like to have the data centers in India and get supported through that kind of a systems. But all these definitely as we go along will require huge amount of balancing power and storage capacity. So right now we are depending on 2 major sources, either it is hydro pump storage or coming from the battery energy storage systems. Recently we launched a report which gives us a confidence that we'll try to have somewhere around 100 gigawatt of hydro pump storage coming within next 10 years, which is going to be a very good support to meeting the 24 hours supply to RE supply to these data centers. Similarly, because we have to cut down our carbon footprint, so we are also trying to have a roadmap for 100 gigawatt of nuclear, which is targeted to 2047. And but there is a visibility even as of now that we go in a fleet mode, and we'll be trying to achieve somewhere around 22 gigawatt by 2032 or 34, and then moving up further with more technology kicking in and more expertise being gained, particularly from the private sectors and all other sectors. So holistically, if I see, we have huge amount of challenges, but to meet those kind of a challenge, we have good mix of resources in the country, and the country is geared up to meet those kind of a challenges. The country is also able to make the transmission lines in a record time as compared to anywhere in the world. If you see, we are able to provide connectivity in 24 months to 36 months time frame in the country, as compared to anywhere. If you take US, etc., they take around 10 years to grant a connectivity. That's the kind of waiting list that they have. If you take even European countries, they also take more than 5 years for building the transmission lines. So at the end, I'll only say that we are totally geared up for any kind of innovations. All the youngsters are welcome from across the world to set up their systems here, and I can assure you that the country is fully equipped and fully geared up to support you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir, for setting the stage with those vital insights on our energy readiness. I'll just quickly ask the panel to get together for a group photograph. Once we have the power, we need the hardware. You cannot train sovereign foundation models without massive localized processing power. To discuss our compute backbone, I would now like to introduce Mr. Tarun Dua, founder and managing director of E2E Networks. Under his leadership, E2E has emerged as India's first AI-first hyperscaler and publicly listed pioneer on the NSE, that is made in India for the world. By delivering enterprise-grade cloud infrastructure at significantly lower costs, he is democratizing AI and empowering over 10,000 innovators with advanced H100, H200, and now B200 GPU infrastructure. His work is building the foundational infrastructure that enables our sovereign AI ambitions. I would now like to invite Tarun to the dais for his opening remarks.
Yeah, thanks, Sovrat. So, thank you for this opportunity to be a part of this August panel. So, building infrastructure is something we have been doing since 2009. So 2009, when we began our journey as E2E Networks, most of the, there is an incident even 10 years before that. So when we had a startup plan, I think somewhere around 2006 era or something like that, or even before that. So we were discussing, 3 or 4 friends who were working in the IT industry. Oh, we are going to make a website, and this is what the website is going to do, and this is how the website will make money. So the 4th guy asked the question, but who is paying for building the website? So the idea was that it is always someone in the West who is outsourcing the development of the website to you guys, and you are building the website for them, not for India. So that was the era once upon a time in India where we used to do everything for the world, not for ourselves. So the second stage was when we started doing things for ourselves. Now the third stage is what we are doing today as a country, where we are saying that not only are we going to do things for ourselves, we are going to do things for the world, and we become the innovation hub and the innovation capital of building cloud infrastructure for the world. So with that, I would like to once again hand over the stage back to Suvrat.
Thank you so much, Tarun, for sharing how E2E got started and the vision behind starting E2E networks. But raw compute and energy are just untapped potential without human ingenuity and the mathematical rigor to harness them. It is my deep honor to introduce Professor Jayadeva, the GSV Chair Professor and former Head of Department of Electrical Engineering at IIT Delhi. An alumnus of the same department, Professor Jayadeva is a trailblazer whose internationally recognized work bridges theoretical mathematics and practical AI. His group was amongst the first to fabricate an SVM-based AD converter on chip. His recent work on minimal complexity machines provides astounding model size reductions of up to 300 times. His contributions to optimization and machine learning are vital to building highly efficient indigenous models. Sir, we would look forward to your opening thoughts on how India can contribute to the research and talent pipeline for building artificial intelligence models from the country.
So thanks, Subrat, for this nice introduction and your kind words, and thanks to Chariot for for inviting me to this discussion here. So there are a number of questions I think they sort of put together, put to me in a sense, which I don't think will get covered in opening remarks. But primary among them is how do we scale this effort within the country, innovation-wise, take it to the next stage. So there are 2 parts to it. Fortunately, I work in both AI/ML and VLSI. And as it turns out, there are a host of issues that need, if you ask me, serious discussion and brainstorming. Primary among them is the issue of manpower. The entire development, at one time, if you remember, Silicon Valley, the word IC used to actually jokingly be referred to as Indians and Chinese. So the intellectual innovation, the innovation that came to build Silicon Valley and most of the entities that are known today came out from Indian universities, came out from the IITs and all, few decades back. Question is, what would it take, for example, to build that same kind of ecosystem here? And you need to have a critical mass of very smart researchers doing work within the country, and we have to supply the reasons for them wanting to do that. First amongst that is, what's the career connect for a student wanting to pursue his or her PhD or any other research degree for that matter at a university here? Most of our, so I should just put a disclaimer, all of my comments are my own personal comments and not representative of IIT Delhi, okay, before I continue further. But if you ask a student today, well, a lot of them come to us for recommendation letters, and in most cases, the first choice wanting to do a research degree would be a university outside. That has to change, and it is changing, but it's changing slowly. What are the reasons for that? Think of a student who decides they're excited by research, wants to do it within the country, wants to do it at university here. What's the career after that? That connect is directly visible if you look at a research lab, you look at a university research lab in the US or elsewhere. That connect is missing in most places, not because there are no industry-driven projects or so on, but the nature of those projects is different. In many of the successful examples that I can discuss when we have that panel itself, the instances are where the university has embedded their researchers within, let's say, university, along with other students, along with other researchers. And those who are working for their PhD are already, for example, employees working in the university environment. The scalability of research is very difficult within the industry. It's expensive to explore ideas because maybe out of 10 or even 50 ideas that you explore, one becomes successful and ends up returning revenue to you. It's far cheaper to do that exploration within the university environment. We have to find models that allow universities and industry to work together, but also to find ways so that the biggest bottleneck of IPR sharing, which is really the bone of contention or really the key point in most MOUs that you sign, this particular aspect is handled more seamlessly and in a simplified fashion. The other difficulty is, of course, with regard to the way the entire ecosystem is configured. There is a deterrent amongst many Indian parents, from their parents to the children, in a sense. Why don't you finish your, current degree first, join a job and worry about a higher degree or PhD later? The difficulty with research is it's best done when people are in their prime, when they are overflowing with new ideas. Once they're in a job, they get saddled with other responsibilities, familial, others, and so on. And it never ends up being the same story, let's say a few years down the line. This particularly hits women candidates harder because there's also a pressure, although I don't want to make it a generic statement, but there's a pressure amongst many of them from their parents to get settled early. So we find as a consequence fewer women in research, in engineering research, let's say particularly, as compared, let's say, to male candidates. And finally, the incentive in terms of what people get if they join a research career and eventually join industry or elsewhere. That incentive needs to be made far sharper and far clearer today. If a student joins an industry today after their undergraduate degree and works there for a while, many of them continue doing research in the industrial setting. But as I said, exploration is costly within the industry itself. And so unless the student has a clear-cut motivation to do outstanding research early on, so that the industry or whatever career option offers them a significant incentive to do that, I think the scalability will be missing. So I'll stop. I think I probably have taken more time than I should have, but we can discuss. Thanks.
Thank you, Professor. I think your vision for preparing the next generation of researchers and what it takes to incentivize them is exactly what this ecosystem needs to thrive. Finally, I'd like to introduce my co-founder at Chariot, Mr. Parth Sarthi. Parth Sarthi went to Stanford to do his undergraduate and master's degree in computer science, and more recently was working at the Google Gemini DeepMind team on the DeepThink project. He was the inventor of Raptor, which is currently the state-of-the-art technique in retrieval augmented generation, based on which all retrieval augmented generation pipelines today operate on. I'd love for Parth to speak on what it takes to build sovereign frontier models and the differences that he has seen building these models out in the West versus what it takes to build these models from India.
Good morning. Thank you, Surat. Thank you, Shamji, Tarundwaji, Professor Jadevaji for their valuable insights. So I want to talk about, what happens when you synthesize all of these to sort of build all of this underlying infrastructure, energy, talent to build sovereign frontier models, right? So I'm going to start with some numbers. India, under the India mission, has 38,000, I think, scaling to more than 50,000 GPUs, which is so much more than, what we had a year ago, 2 years ago, thanks to the India mission. And I'm sure the scaling up will continue to have many more GPUs now. But if you look at the West, there are companies with much more GPUs with deals for many Blackwell and Rubin chips coming in, right? So I was at Google DeepMind. I worked there on Gemini DeepThink, the reasoning capabilities of one of the most resource-rich AI labs in the world, and that this number of GPUs is going to go up. But why does any of this matter, right? Why is there a GPU race after all? Why can't we just write better algorithms and make better models? So the answer to this is, in my opinion, one of the most important empirical discoveries in the history of computer science, scaling laws. So the GPT papers were impressive. GPT-2 could write paragraphs, GPT-3 could write essays. They were really good work. But the GPT papers were the tinder. The match, the thing that actually started this whole AI revolution and lit the entire industry were scaling laws. So in January of 2020, Jared Camplin and some colleagues at OpenAI, including Dario, who went down to start Anthropic, published a paper called Scaling Laws for Neural Language Models, and what they found was really simple. So if you take a neural network's loss, its error rate, how wrong it is, against the amount of compute used to train on it, on a log-log scale, you basically get a straight line, a very clean, smooth power law, right? A straight line that spans 7 orders of magnitude. What that means is, in really simple languages, every time you 10x your compute, your model gets measurably, predictably better, right? Not randomly, not sometimes, every single time. The exponent they found was, roughly 0.07, so which means for every doubling of the parameters, you see the loss drop by 5%. And, this sounds small, but at a log-loss scale, across many, many doublings, if these gains compound enormously. GPT-2 to 3 was a 100x increase, 3 to 4 was another 100x, and each jump, produced a leap in capability, right? And then the DeepMind Chinchilla paper, which corrected it, said you need to roughly scale your data and compute equally. So the reason why this was so consequential was that this turned intelligence into an engineering problem, right? Not a science problem. You don't really need a breakthrough. You need more GPUs, more data, more electricity. You need money and whoever has the most money, right? So you could call the race right there. If the scaling laws hold, they have held for 5 orders of magnitude. So then there's a spending competition, right? And this was the dark picture. And a lot of people would ask me, why are you leaving DeepMind? Why come back to India to build against this kind of backdrop? And the reason is this. So about a year and a half ago, something changed. We had the reasoning revolution that hit. There was the O1 model, the O3 models, and they showed there was a different way to actually make these models smarter. So, this word reasoning gets thrown out a lot. Let me, explain what it is in some simple language, right? In the old paradigm, you would pre-train these models by making them bigger and training it on more data, which is pre-training. And the models will see this trillions of text, and at inference time, they would just generate it really fast by just one at a time with no ability to sort of correct for its mistakes. And these reasoning models, they started working differently. You could give it a problem, a math problem, a coding challenge, a logic puzzle, and you could let it think. So it would generate a long chain of thought. It would think for a bit, and then it would try an approach, maybe backtrack, try a different approach, and eventually reach a final answer. So this result was a new scaling law, and where you could actually spend more RL training compute. And now we're even seeing that this new type of RL compute is actually even exceeding the amount of compute spent during pre-training. So this was a reset, and if you look at, and let me explain why. So if you look at RL training, right, the majority of your compute is not actually in gradient updates, it's not actually in the training, it's in these models trying different things out in different rollouts. And this is basically inference, and this doesn't really need to happen on your top of the line 100,000 GPUs in one building with NVLink and InfiniBand. This RL inference, the sampling can be synchronous. You can generate asynchronous. Sorry, you can generate rollouts on one set of machines, collect them. You can make them distributed and so on. You can make them run on older GPUs on across multiple locations. And now we have hundreds of techniques coming out every day to make this work, right? And just doing RL is one step. The other part, and this is I think the main thing why I do think India will succeed, is environments. RL environments are where majority of the training happen. A math environment has math problems. A coding environment has coding problems where the model tries, gets feedback, and improves. And the key observation is that these environments, can scale with humans and CPUs and not necessarily GPUs. GPUs are important, but they're not the most important thing, right? So building a math environment requires mathematicians. Building a coding environment requires software engineers. Building a medical environment, could require doctors defining clinical scenarios. And this is human expertise, right? It scales with people and ordinary compute, which we have a lot of in this country, right? So this is the bet I made. India has 1.4 billion people. We have domain experts in every field: medicine, law, agriculture, finance, education. We can work in so many languages. We can build environments for problems that a lot of labs in the West don't even know exist, like agriculture loan assessment in Tamil, legal aid reasoning in Hindi, and so on. These are problems that affect hundreds of millions of people. Then we can build the RL environments for them that don't exist anywhere in the world, right? With the India AI mission grant, we have a lot of compute to actually build this frontier if we're smarter about these environments, right? And if you look at India is a voice-first country, and that's why at Chariot, we're building a voice native speech reasoning model, right? Reasoning over speech for all the reasons I just described: RL-trained, environment-driven, and inference scale. So I think the race to AGI sort of has begun. We have, with the right environments, the right algorithms, the right focus, and this distributed setup, now I think with the support of a mission that's already scaling up so many GPUs, I think we can go ahead and we can win, not by outspending anyone, but by outthinking them. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Parth, for sharing what you think is the roadmap for building intelligence from India. With this, our distinguished speakers now assembled. I think let's dive straight into the panel discussion. Folks, just want to make sure that everyone's mics are working. Team, can you just help us? Okay, perfect. So I have a few set of questions that I've prepared for all our panelists, but people please feel free to interrupt, and if somebody can go around with the mic asking questions, please do so. So I'll ask my first question to Tarun. I think we've all spoken about large GPU clusters, of how they're growing in size. Would love to understand your perspective of where you see like India's compute requirements are today. Where do you forecast them going to be? And where do you think the demand for the same is coming from?
If we just look at the compute requirements of, say, top 1500 or 2000 or 2500 or even 5000 organizations, so are there enough teams that can utilize, say, 16 to 128 GPUs? Just looking at top 1000 organizations and say that, like, do they need at least 128 new GPUs every year? I think the answer is most likely yes. more likely the answer is that initially we need 128 GPUs and eventually we are going to use at least 1,000 GPUs, where there are multiple teams within an organization trying to solve multiple problems. And so it's not just that GPUs are used only for training and inference. They are also used for data cataloging. They are also used for like many different types of inference, which is like available straight out of the box. So net, the compute environment required by each of these organizations is going to be of the size of at least 1024, and that's a representative of like the mid segment and the SME and the higher education and research, and like literally there are so many different types of organizations apart from like for-profit companies. So net, if we were just to look at like say 1,000 organizations wanting 128 GPUs each, you're looking at like India needing at least 128,000 GPUs, and we are not there yet. So which means that like there is a journey ahead of us in terms of building the infrastructure and having faith and the confidence that yes, like India may be lagging maybe 18 months behind the rest of the world, but that lag will keep coming down, and at some point of time we leapfrog like we did with 5G and 4G. So when that leapfrog happens, those compute requirements would explode even further. So I think it is safe to say that like India as a country with 20% of world's population and currently having capacity of processing about 3% of world's data will sometime in the future leapfrog to processing not 20 but like maybe 40-50% of world's data by becoming the data center and the compute capital of the world. So those are my thoughts around that.
No, absolutely. Thank you so much, Tarun, for sharing that. So I think at a bare minimum, what you're saying is like the 128,000 GPU infrastructure that we...
That's today's requirement just in India alone. And we just don't serve India alone. Like when we build compute infrastructure, we serve the whole world, because this is not a super latency sensitive like a website or a CDN kind of an environment. So reasoning models, they think, and when you add another 200 milliseconds to the thinking process, it does not like really kind of like add a whole lot of latency to what the people are experiencing. So in that sense, we can actually serve the compute for the world. So which means that we can build a lot more than what just India needs alone.
Makes sense. And so like that's an excellent segue to my next question, which I'll direct to Mr. Shri Ghanshyam Prasad ji. Sir, when we talk about these kinds of compute infrastructure that is needed for the country, how do you forecast like what the energy consumption of modern day data centers would be compared to our overall energy requirements for the country? And like how does our country, for example, be prepared to meet that over a 12, 24, 36 month time horizon?
See, we have already, as I mentioned in my opening remark, we have already factored it right now, demand equivalent to 16 gigawatt, which we are projecting for the data centers. But the philosophy of planning we have changed now in India, and we are trying to upgrade our systems, our planning systems every year. It has been made dynamic. Earlier you used to hear something like 5-year plans, right? Those days are gone. So we are upgrading our transmission every 6 months, that plans, and the resource adequacy plans is being upgraded every year. And even when I was speaking in Singapore, where US and all other regulators were there, and they said, how are you able to really manage in 6 months and 1 year? So I said, it's a computing environment that has gone in India, and we have really catched up and we are able to do this. And that has really helped. If you see, whatever error we make in the planning process or the projections, we are able to correct it within no time. And that has led us to do a course correction immediately whenever we have this kind of plan. Second is the growing demand that the country has right now, which is phenomenal. I'll say it is much, much higher than any other countries across the world. Most of the European countries, you'll find it, they are growing at either they are stagnant or growing at 1% or 1.5% or 2% at the most. We are growing at 7 to 8%, and some year we have even grown at rate of around 10%. So meeting that kind of a demand, unless you are vigilant and you are able to do it in real time frame, probably you will not be able to sustain that kind of a thing. And the kind of kind of further expectations that is there with the customers, probably you need to have that kind of jump.
And sir, I think like one follow-up question which I have actually both to you and Tarun is that like these modern day data centers, like the energy densities are hitting quite high levels, right? So one thing that we hear is that do we move data centers close to where the energy generation is happening? So when we talk about these new upcoming like data center hubs, you talked about, you know, like sort of Mumbai being one of the hubs for where these data centers are being created. But like according to my naive opinion, there's a lot of energy production that's happening in states like Rajasthan. Like how do you foresee this environment? That do you see data centers moving close to where the energy hubs are? Or like would Tarun, you'd be interested in building like data centers close to these regions? I would love to hear both of your perspective on the same.
So I am really looking forward to like the SMR nuclear reactors being made available as quickly as possible in the data center campuses. And see, nuclear power is again, like I'm shilling for nuclear power for no reason. So nuclear power is like also very reliable. So you can actually run it for like altogether for like 8 years, 10 years. Now several advantages to that is like you are not transporting on the grid, so you don't have to pay the transit fee, which is very, very reasonable in India. But like again, every cost saved is that savings can be passed on to the end customers. And similarly, you also don't need diesel generators to be there on site. You can just have a slightly larger battery and energy storage systems along with nuclear, and you can build a data centers of the future. So that is something that I'm really looking forward to, but I think like it could be like 3 to 5 years away. So those are my thoughts about like wherever you're putting data centers, you can put the power over there as long as there is availability of sufficient amount of land, because nuclear power requires like some free land around that facility. And another advantage of nuclear power is that once you have set up like some land for nuclear power, you can like modularly increase the size. So like, let's say you start with 220 megawatts, then you can add like in chunks of 220 megawatts, which is the most dominant design of the SMR or like even the BSR designs that are there. So that's what I think about it.
I think what Tarun said is very right, but the visibility that I see in SMR may not be in
It's
3 to 4 years.
again. Yeah.
So maybe slightly longer period. I'm not very sure about it.
Sure.
And because
But
I
till
have
that time we need to rely on
talking to most of the people who are going to be into the business of nuclear, because so far we have only NPCIL, Nuclear Power Corporation of India Limited. But all others are also slightly apprehensive that probably that may take slightly longer time. But again, what is required, what he rightly said is you will be requiring a containment zone. And that containment zones vary anywhere between 1 kilometer to 5 kilometers, depending on the capacity that you are going to have in the nuclear space. That means again you will be moving away from the main crowded places, right? Because you require a containment zone wherein no habitations are allowed. Second is, you rightly mentioned that we are trying to say that you should go to as close to the resource center as possible, because you need green power. If you really need green power, then you should have that kind of a closeness. Because if you take, let's say if you are targeting somewhere from Rajasthan or Gujarat, we require a huge amount of transmission lines, and we are trying to optimize on the transmission system itself. So let it be at the generation place. And Maharashtra, there, I mean, good thing for India is we have 8 to 9 states which are very rich in renewables. Starting from Gujarat, Rajasthan, Maharashtra, Karnataka, Telangana, Andhra. I mean, so all these, and so you have multiple choices. It's not that you have only one choice where you need to put it. Similarly, if you see the IT hubs which is getting created, they are also scattered around the country. So that, and the last point I said is we are trying to have multiple landing points again. So the moment you have a multiple landing points, say for example for Singapore, Vizag or Paradeep or even Gopalpur could be another choice. So we are looking for an alternative, and Singapore probably is likely to be connected with the Vizag. So similarly for the western side as well. So you need to have the diversity of this, and that is how you will be able to successfully meet your demand.
No, makes sense. Thank you so much for sharing those points of view. I'll move on, sir, to Professor Jayadeva. Like when we talk about the talent pipeline for the country, Like, would love to hear your perspective, sir, on what you think is sort of the undergraduate readiness of our workforce for training and deploying these AI workloads. And like, what is your point of view on like a lot of people in our country moving abroad to do higher education or moving abroad to do higher for better work opportunities compared to sort of the PhD education system in the country? Like, what would your perspective be on, you know, empowering more of our children to sort of continue PhD opportunities, to continue grad school opportunities in India versus sort of doing that in other institutions around the world?
So good question. I would have done the same. I did my BTech from IIT Delhi, and I was all set to go abroad. It's just a chance conversation with one of my professors who said, well, you know, you'll go abroad, but you won't come back. He was probably right. And he also said, well, you know, when your parents need you the most, you'll be sending them money, right? And so somehow he convinced me, and I did stay back. So that curiously they offered me a job itself. So, you know, so I just was stuck here. But in general, you will find that, and rightly so, you know, I would say visibility of a degree abroad, variety of factors contribute to most of the brightest talent we have wanting to do, well, not just PhDs, but, you know, masters in research or all of these abroad. That changed, you know, I would say when my batch, we did our BTech, about 75 to 80% of the batch went abroad. That doesn't happen anymore. Most of the students are in the country, but they are not typically pursuing higher degrees. And one reason is, well, of course, jobs are plentiful, you know, for bright students. Many of them, and really pretty much everybody gets employed. But we are not successful on the research front in attracting the brightest talent there. Fundamental to that, in my view, is, well, why are the students staying back in numbers more? Well, the, you know, career opportunities are better. They're getting paid more, they're getting paid better, they have a chance to build a better life for their families. So that has changed their trajectory in terms of where they go after the undergraduate degree. But what's the career path if they choose to do research? How many firms, for example, within the country really want to have PhDs in numbers and hire them? And is there a clear statement being made by them when they go to universities or colleges and, you know, look to recruit students? That, I think, is missing. Well, I would always say there are exceptions to whatever I say, you know, so you should take what I say with a pinch of salt. Second is, you do not see their visibility on campus and in the labs like you do in the West. So in the US, for example, you would see a significant number of people from industry working within the department alongside other students. That leads to very rich discussions. It leads to creation of, you know, new ideas. It spurs growth in terms of very creative development of new ideas, and very often the people discussing these new ideas end up, you know, forming newer startups, and so the chain grows very rapidly. I'll give you one success story. It's a small example though, but just to set the tone for what I'm trying to emphasize. In 2018, a team from our department won a worldwide challenge at one of the foremost AI/ML conferences in NeurIPS. So NeurIPS is a very premier AI/ML conference, and a team from the department won a worldwide challenge called AutoML there. How did that happen? Well, two of the people in that team were actually employees of a firm working full-time in the department. When this company had stationed them in the department and said, well, work for your PhD, but you have to work on areas or these problems that are relevant to them. They were, of course, discussing with many other students in the department who were also in that lab. And then, of course, there were professors part of that team. That kind of success story is, you know, I would say rare. And if one finds a way to replicate those examples in numbers, I think the story will change dramatically. It takes a leap of faith. Most HR managers are averse to letting their employees work full-time at a university. Well, if you're working there, you're not on site and therefore you're on some kind of leave. In this case, we created a way so that they could log in through VPN and work as if they were on site. So it's kind of a site for themselves. The other problem, of course, is people have to join research careers early. They have to take that plunge early on. That's when they are most productive. That's when they, can churn out new ideas quickly. And I think while the government is doing a great deal to make that happen, I think we need more examples from the industry trying to do that, trying to bridge that gap and working with it. So if that happens, in my view, the story will dramatically change.
And sir, how do students today look at PhD as a career path right out of college, outside of the other opportunities they may have?
So the duration of PhD is the primary deterrent. It's 5 years, and so there's a social let's say deterrent as well. I have heard from students when they get back home, PhD student, some neighbor will make a comment, well, you're still studying, is it? Because you're still at still at college, still at university, haven't got out, aren't in a job. So it's that mindset will change, in my view, only if one, you get paid more. I mean, if they're actually employees, let's say, working, that changes. If the fellowships, I think, are far more lucrative, and that can only happen with industry help, in my view. And but there's a via media, there's a path in between. We have something called the MS Research, which is like a research degree that takes about 2 years plus. Numbers there have actually tripled in the last 3 to 4 years. So number of PhD enrollments, I would say, is now static. It dropped after COVID, but in this MS Research degree, those numbers have actually tripled in the last 3 years. I'm saying for our department. So I think we have to find, we have to really brainstorm. I think that dialogue hasn't happened in sufficient measure to be able to answer your solution, answer your question sufficiently.
Subrat, if I may supplement. I think Professor is saying what is the practical case, but government is slightly thinking in a different manner now. And you must have heard about ANRF, that is Anusandhan Foundation, that has been created with an outlay of 1 lakh crore rupees, and this is going to be across the country, across all the segments, all the sectors, which will be almost under the principal scientific advisor of the country. Very recently, we also had a meeting with him, and very recently, you must have seen that we have got something like 20,000 crores under CCUS, carbon capture and utilization and storage, sequestration. So these are some of the projects which are now being identified. What are the gaps that India has in terms of a technological things which other countries has, or can we surpass them? So that's with that objective this fund has been created, and it's likely that the industry and this kind of an organization, and even what we are thinking in the power sector is, can we have a university or maybe a cluster of such this thing. Already one has been experimented in Gandhinagar, and which is doing a good job. That all those people who are trying to do some kind of innovations, can they be supported through some kind of a fund, and then the industry takes over. So the gap that earlier used to be there, that a PhD, he does a paper, or a professor, he does a paper, or even his promotion is linked to the paper publication. So that kind of a situation will have to be slightly modified, and you need to really take whatever you do, whatever PhD that you do, or whatever research you do, it has to be taken forward from there, so that what we are thinking is that It's a concept to commercialization. So you have to take it to that level, and then only it has to flow. Very recently, we also had a good competition of AI use case in power sector. I think only 2 months back, and we have identified few companies who are really trying to have that kind of an ideas, and we have given them we have already assigned them some task that okay, you do it on a nomination basis. So that's the kind of you'll find the changes, that the change in mindset of the government and trying to support this kind of an activities that is going to happen.
Sir, I would like to add something over here. So these are great ideas that like research should be promoted and supported in India. Now academia does a very good job of identifying pure problems which need to be solved, which advances the human knowledge. We in industry see the build versus buy decisions like almost every day. And also we kind of like look at all the roadmaps of, okay, what needs to be done in what amount of time. So give you a few examples, like basically like if you just look at say things like optoelectronic networks, co-packaging of optics with electronics. So those kind of problems are very well known. So to go from 100 Gbps to 1.6 Gbps, there is a certain time frame in which it has to be done, and it's at a certain volume of production that it has to be done. So which means that resources have to be deployed in a manner that it produces goal-directed research in a certain time frame. So what is considered as like a good outcome is something that we in industry can help define, but most of the time we don't always have the kind of money to deploy behind those goal-directed research, and also we do not have our own use cases for kind of like selling out that much to be able to support that volume of research. So that's my suggestion, that task people like us who make build versus buy decisions to at least create the roadmaps that okay, this would be good to have if we can do it in this much time frame. If we don't do it in this much time frame, somebody else in the world will go and do it. So that is something we can help with.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is the basic idea. This is the basic idea with which we are trying to have this. Just I'll give you one example. In fact, we are facing huge amount of challenge in HVDC right now in the country. We have only 2 companies in the world, and they are really taking us on ride. In terms of supply chain, in terms of prices, etc., etc. Then we said, okay, nothing doing. Can we have our own industry coming up in India? So we have now lined up L&T and Power Grid Corporation of India. Both of them are contributing 300 crores each to go in for that the gaps. So you'll find, I mean, this kind of situation, we have already tried to identify something like 76 elements in the power sector which needs immediate attention. So you would need to go aggressive now on this kind of thing. Similarly, other sectors as well. IT sectors, METI is trying to do, say in mining areas, in critical mineral area. So you'll find all the ministries have now waken up to take up this kind of a challenge. Thank you.
I just wanted to react in a different way to some of these comments. So it's not always that research needs to be ab initio. A lot of research is applied. A lot of research that happens within universities, IIT, and so on. A lot of it actually is with industry, but more often than not, the industry, funded projects tend to be kind of at arm's length. It's like kind of saying, like, look, here is the problem, and if you can find a solution.
So we need both types of research.
Yeah. So
because
but let me
if we only do goal-directed, we will never innovate really well.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to say it differently. So the point I was trying to emphasize is not about either necessarily short-term or long-term or medium-term. You need to have a mix of all three. Certainly, new ideas come forth at all possible, all possible levels. The difference that eventually an idea makes is, well, ideas don't make money. Companies make money, or organizations make money. So the key is translation. It is difficult to create an ecosystem within a university that's efficient and, let's say, I would just say efficient at translation. On the industry side, translation is much simpler. They're geared up for production. As an example, if you ask a student to write production level code, it's not going to happen. It's not feasible. And that's why one has to rethink the nature of this partnership. It's not about funding. It's about trying to work on these problems together. Like I gave you an example what happens or used to happen, say, at Berkeley Cadence Labs. Cadence and set up a lab at Berkeley, and they had researchers from both sides working together in the same place. Now, it might be a new idea comes across, you come across a new idea, might be something that's groundbreaking, will take time to scale, and you want to look at that separately. There are problems that would give an edge to a company today, and they need to be solved in the next 6 months. Those are also problems that people need to work on and look at. And sometimes there are things that come simply out of the discussion. Some things a company has been doing for the last 10 years turns out as a far more efficient way that you could deploy in the next 6 months. So all three happen. Right now I would say the dialogue is at arm's length. And that if it changes, I would say funding is less the key than really that, making that dialogue happen. Because when that starts happening, you will also see excited students wanting to say, look, I know that I'll find a career. I mean, I'll give you an example. We had we still have, it's probably one of the only master's programs in the world that doesn't take any money from the government. It's fully supported by industry or sponsored projects. It's at IIT Delhi. It's called the VLSI Design Tools and Technology Program. It was started in '96. And till today, all the students are sponsored either by projects or by industry. And many of them have led to, patents, other things going on. Two of the gold medalists of that program decided to forego all their placement offers. They had like 3 or 4 offers in hand off campus, on campus. And these gold medalists decided, they were working with me, and they decided to stay back and continue a PhD because they realized all these companies want them. They're really good at what they do. They'll get a job, and they wanted to see that chip come out. They wanted to see, that develop. They wanted to test it out and see the outcome of that. That level of excitement really happens when these are live projects with involvement from the industry or whoever else. I mean, it could be even a government entity, public sector, but you need the end users enmeshed with the problem discussion and the solution.
No, absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that, sir, and everybody. I'd like to invite Parth to share a personal story, like relating to something that sir just said, that about people who move to the US don't often come back. And then also, like on the same side, that like while you were studying, you decided to sort of take a break and sort of join Google DeepMind part-time. So what was that thought process like? It was very similar to what sir described as a project, as the passion of working on a life project. And what was sort of your reasons for moving back?
Oh, thanks, Subrat. I think the thought process there was, I was doing my undergrad and my master's, and at some point, I wanted to go on also, do a PhD and perhaps be in academia. That was definitely one of the considerations I had, because I got into research pretty early on, even in my undergrad career. I think the excitement around AI and sort of showing that even a lot of PhDs and professors at my university were going on and then building out companies and showing that this research that's been done for so many years now is actually it's been started in the 80s, but now is actually paying off these dividends and leading to this new technological revolution. As I think Professor rightly said, it's sometimes a lot of these ideas take a while to actually materialize, and we were seeing that materialization sort of happen in the Bay Area there. And then so that was at that time, again, AI is one thing that required a lot of compute, so a lot of these big industry labs had that compute, which universities had some of it, but didn't at this scale. And as I said, scaling laws were happening, so you wanted that scale. So that was my reason to sort of be at DeepMind, to see that scale. And then, but really, I mean, we need that sort of same infrastructure in India, and we need the same research and people in India. So that was what sort of drove me back to here, because now with the mission support, we have similar compute in India, and actually we were seeing that, these scaling laws show you can scale up, but there are new innovations that India sort of needs. And there's so many smart people here. So now that we have the compute, we have the people, for me, it just made a lot of sense to be back here and, build the same thing from India.
No, thanks for sharing that, Parth. So I'll open the floor for questions. There are mics here if people in the audience want to ask.
Hi, my name is Pradeep Subramaniam. I come from the physical world. So AI, I have been recently building an agentic AI, but I come from the physical world, R&D, technology, etc. So my question is to Ghanshyamji and to Parth actually. So if you build any infrastructure, the physical layer, right, in terms of IoT sensors and the one which is collecting data is the most important part. So what I was finding in this whole discussion was data centers, infrastructure, but nobody talked about the IoT part or the physical collection of data, right? For example, the electricity plants that you have, whether it is at the power generation, at the distribution, transmission, hardly any IoT based systems or SCADA legacy systems, right? They are not connected end to end in terms of building a digital twin of this electric system, right? We built something like this for the Haryana government, but it's not scaled to the full extent, right? So where is the role of India building the ecosystem for the physical layer, which can generate so much amount of data, which can help build this AGI, right? So while infrastructure is good, how do we create? China does that, right? China has use cases which are full of physical layers which are there. We in India tend to, for example, UPI we build, it did not require much of a physical layer, so we could easily build, right? I think the catch is building the physical layer. What are we doing for that? For example, in your area, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for raising this particular concerns of the industry, and this is definitely an issue. And let me be honest on this. We have very good infrastructure, particularly coming from the generation side and till transmission and going up to the load dispatch centers. Till that, absolutely we are at par with the world. But when it comes to the actual concentration to and link with the customers, that means the distribution and the customer link, probably we are still lacking behind. So that this is the physical and this is the practical situation wherein we are at present. And you all must be hearing about the issues of the distribution licenses and their financial viability. So until they are financially viable, probably they will not kick in into the area of automation. I'm coming.
My question is, why is the government not supporting to help create this data, I am saying?
I'm coming there only. So we realize this, right? It's not that we didn't realize in the government that this particular segment of the entire value chain of the power sector requires some kind of a support. We had been supporting this particular segment earlier as well. And in the recent one, it is the RDSS program that has kicked in. And this is a program which is reform linked program. So if you are able to achieve certain goals, you will be given the money, or else you will not be given the money. And this is supporting in two ways, two very, very important ways. One is the infrastructure that is required for ensuring reliability of supply. And second is the automation systems. That means we need smart meters. Until you have a communicable meters, you will not be able to do that kind of a smartness into the entire value chain of the product. So as I said, we had this missing link. We had come up to the state load dispatch centers, but going from the state load dispatch centers and connecting with the customers, you needed this kind of a smartness. And that is how we introduced the smart meters, and it has rolled out. I think so far, more than around 3 crores of meters have already been installed in the country, with 25 crores already in the pipeline. So hopefully we will be able to reach this kind of a number in next, say, 2 years time frame, or maybe in 3 years time frame. What that it leads to? Then it leads to the SCADA system being developed in this particular segment as well, isn't it? And right now we do have the SCADA system, but it is coming from the from other side of the fence. So we have shortlisted a few companies, and we are trying to work with them so that we have our own indigenous SCADA systems, which is supporting the entire value chain. You all are knowing about the cybersecurity concerns, and we do in a similar manner. And so we want this kind of things to be developed in India as well. Now, what does this mean? The moment you have the automation in this particular segment, huge amount of data is now going to be generated. How do you use this data? So that is how I said that we already had one round of discussion with the startups and some of the AI and driven companies. And let me tell you their enthusiasm level. And they say, sir, give me 1 year time frame. I am going to map all your assets across the country. I mean, that's the kind of enthusiasm in these youngsters. And we really salute this particular group. And that is how my distribution team in ministry, they are working with this kind of people, and so that how quickly we are able to take their supports, map them, and try to really go further. Further, whenever you have this data, then the data has not only to be used only for the billing purpose, right? It has to be used for your planning of network, planning of optimization of resources. I mean, you can define n number of use cases the moment you have all this kind of. So this is in pipeline. I'm really thankful to you for reminding me this, and we are trying to catch up.
So my point was that, for example, geo tagging of all the assets of your, right from the power generation to the end point to the consumer. It's not done end to end today, right? It's also a security risk for the country if some other, server is hosting all that data. It should all be hosted in India, in the data centers, every platform at the back end, including the LLM which is managing that, should be completely in India, right? So I'm saying that the end-to-end deployment of AGI will happen only when we have the real physical layer generating enormous amount of secure data which is not hosted in outside India and lying within the sovereign data centers of India. I mean, that's the kind of thought that government needs to think. Then we can become, so that's why I wanted my second question to Parth, that what are we doing to build that kind of data which will help us set up the AGI part, right? So AGI doesn't come simply from some small use case, right? You need trillions and trillions of tokens and data for that, right? And you need the domain expertise and knowledge to build that. How do we do that? What's the question?
Before Parth takes in, definitely these youngsters have better insights than me, but this gap that you rightly just now mentioned about the data being hosted elsewhere. In fact, this we came to know the moment we started rolling out these smart meters in our systems, and we found that the suppliers are having their resources somewhere going out. Immediately we took that action and we said that nothing doing, all the data has to be housed in the country itself. So right now, whatever smart meters that we are placing in the country, their data doesn't go out and it has to be in India. So wherever we are able to plug, I think we are trying to do that and trying to create that physical layer so that we are cyber secured. That is very, very important for the power sector. Parth, I think you will take over now.
Yeah. No, thank you, sir. I think just to echo some of sir's thought, a lot of work is actually being done on this layer, right? So if you look at data sets, we need indigenous data sets. You have AI Kosh by the India AI mission, which is solving for this, right? Indian data sets for Indian companies to build these frontier models. If you look at compute, as you rightly said, we need compute in India. So if you look at the budget policy, we have this data centers, we have till 2047 tax-free policy. So we'll see a lot of these data centers, come in. There are already a lot of data centers being built. We have Tarunji who's building E2E rightly for Indian infrastructure, so that this compute, the frontier models of India can be hosted in India, and it can all be done on local compute. So I think the GPU infrastructure that is being supported by the India mission is actually just solving for the exact case that you're saying. And we already, over the last 2 years, we've scaled up our GPU so much for this. So I do think a lot of work has already been done, and this work is just going to continue to solve for this.
Sir, I would like to take a stab at trying to answer your question. I think we are still having some gaps in terms of being able to harness the impatience of the youth to build physical stuff. So unlike software, the physical stuff actually costs money and the cycle time today is very high. So you need to be able to reach the nearest 3D printer to be able to prototype. You need to be able to kind of like design the chips. You need to be able to solve for all the physics problems. I think what the LLMs will do for us and the frontier models will do for us is to reduce the cycle time of the thinking part. Like say you have to do the actual physical world calculations, you have to do the digital twin part. That part is used to take a lot of time, that gets solved faster. But what we still need to solve is that we need to do the prototyping. That is the part we still need to solve. But I think like having spoken to a few companies who used to do physical prototyping, they have done away with a lot of physical prototyping altogether, and they are just doing it on top of the digital twins now. So, so I think somewhere we will converge. So that's my hope.
So I am saying that imagine the next UPI innovation is say the agentic AI for the vending machines. I am working on that. But physical layer, right, of the sensors which poll the data for a vending machine, the back end of that, hardly any vending machine is connected to IoT. It doesn't have any physical layer. It is just used like a dabba, right? So the point I am saying is that why the government is not enabling the instruments which help the connectivity of this data to the AI and the data centers, and then the intelligence can be built to automate, to create more jobs, you know, it's very counterintuitive. We say that we will build agentic AI, we're going to reduce people. No, actually the work is going to increase because the vending machine infrastructure will go 10 times or 20 times. It will become like Japan, right? You'll have more vending machines. But I do not think that that kind of an infrastructure, private industries, I am from the private industry, I cannot build it. For me, day to day running a vending machine business is, I get cheap labor. I cannot use sensors, right? So this is the catch-20 kind of situation where most of the infrastructure that we have in India, we have cheap labor, we still manage with that. We cannot take the next leap. How do we take the next leap? By getting the platforms like UPI to be built with physical layers. That was the question.
I think some of the answer will be given by the India Energy Stack. I think you must have heard about that. And I am also a member of that committee, and we are deliberating on all these use cases and where that gaps are. So definitely, I think we'll take care of that. Thank you.
No, thank you, sir, for asking that question. I'd like to circulate the mic in the audience if other people would like to ask questions. People can just raise their hands if they have any. I think there's one in the back.
हेलो, गुड मॉर्निंग सभी के लिए। तीन चीज़ें होती हैं किसी भी इंडस्ट्री को डेवलप करने के लिए। पहला प्राइमरी सेक्टर, सेकेंडरी सेक्टर एंड टर्सरी सेक्टर। जो आपका एआई इम्पैक्ट समिट है वो हमेशा बिजनेस मॉडल की बात कर रहा है। व्हाट अबाउट द मैन्युफैक्चरिंग सेक्टर? क्योंकि कोई भी यूनिट अगर बनेगी, जैसे सेमीकंडक्टर हमारे यहाँ डेवलप नहीं होते, चाइनीज से हम लोग लेते हैं। हालांकि अभी इंडस्ट्री बन रही है, 6 यूनिट्स बनी है इंडस्ट्री की, सेमीकंडक्टर इंडस्ट्री की 6 यूनिट लगाई जा रही हैं। लेकिन व्हाट अबाउट जैसे 9 गीगावाट का लगभग इंडस्ट्री बनेगी जो डेटा सेंटर्स के लिए है 2032 तक, 2032 तक। तो व्हाट अबाउट द मैन्युफैक्चरिंग सेक्टर? जब तक वो डेवलप नहीं होगा तब तक हम बिजनेस मॉडल पे ही काम करते रहेंगे क्या जिंदगी भर?
ये सारी चीजें जो हैं वो इंटरकनेक्टेड हैं, तो नथिंग इज टू द एक्सक्लूजन ऑफ अनदर। आप जिस भी सेक्टर में काम कर रहे हैं, इवेंचुअली दैट विल फीड इनटू द अदर सेक्टर्स। सो एज लॉन्ग एज द इंटेंट इज देयर टू बी इंडियन एंड बाय इंडियन, जब वो इंटेंट रहेगा तो ऑटोमेटिकली सारी प्रॉब्लम्स जो हैं वो हम आपस में मिलकर सॉल्व कर लेंगे। अगर इंटेंट ये रहेगा कि मैं तो आगे बढ़ जाऊं बट बाकी सब पीछे रह जाएं, तो हम आगे नहीं बढ़ेंगे।
लेकिन सर मैन्युफैक्चरिंग सेक्टर तो एक बेस हो गया ना, उसको हम कैसे डेवलप कर रहे हैं? उसका तो कोई फ्रेमवर्क ही नहीं है।
कोई भी चीज पहले या बाद में नहीं आती, सभी चीजें पैरेलल में ही चलती हैं।
ओके, थैंक यू।
कोई स्पेसिफिक है आपका कि मैन्युफैक्चरिंग कौन सा एरिया आप टच करना चाहते हो? मैन्युफैक्चरिंग इज वेरी वाइड।
हाँ, या माइक्रो प्रोसेसर यूनिट्स
Microprocessors, I think
क्योंकि
METI
AI के लिए सबसे बेसिक यूनिट तो माइक्रो प्रोसेसर ही है, और डेटा सेंटर्स के लिए भी सबसे माइक्रो यूनिट माइक्रो प्रोसेसर ही है. तो व्हाट अबाउट माइक्रो प्रोसेसर? क्या हम चाइना से ही खरीदते रहेंगे? नो डाउट कि 2025 में 6 यूनिट साड़त में और यहाँ सब बनाई जा रही हैं, लेकिन अभी तक उसका कोई प्रोमिनेंट रिजल्ट नहीं है.
वो तो थोड़ा टाइम लगता है ना उस लेवल पे आने के लिए.
सर एक्चुअली माइक्रो प्रोसेसर में अगर आप देखें तो या तो मोबाइल फोन या फिर सर्वर या डेस्कटॉप, जो पूरा मदरबोर्ड है उसके ऊपर देर आर अबाउट लाइक ए कपल ऑफ 100 पीसेज ऑफ इंटेलेक्चुअल प्रॉपर्टी. नाउ ऑल दैट इंटेलेक्चुअल प्रॉपर्टी अगर आप देखें तो बहुत सारी इंटेलेक्चुअल प्रॉपर्टी बनती इंडिया में ही है, इंडिया के लोग ही बनाते हैं. सो लाइसेंसिंग इंडिया के थ्रू नहीं होती बिकॉज द आईपी इज गेटिंग डेवलप्ड विद फॉरेन मनी. तो यहाँ पे हम R&D करते हैं, आईपी डेवलप करते हैं, कोई उसको और कमर्शलाइज करता है. तो आई थिंक दैट गैप हैज टू बी फुलफिल्ड बाय हैविंग वॉल्यूम्स विच आर डोमेस्टिकली अवेलेबल. सो जब डोमेस्टिकली वॉल्यूम अवेलेबल होगा तो जो सिस्टम ऑन चिप आईपी जो डेवलप किया गया है उसको ऐड करने के लिए जो लोग काम कर रहे हैं, दे विल सी ए डोमेस्टिक मार्केट. सो उसके बाद ये सारी चीज़ें ऑटोमेटिकली होनी शुरू हो जाएंगी. तो लाइक आई थिंक जो बहुत ही इंपॉर्टेंट पार्ट अभी हो रहा है इज टू मूव द कंट्री फॉरवर्ड, बिल्ड ए लार्ज मार्केट विच इज इंटरकनेक्टेड विद द वर्ल्ड. वंस यू हैव लार्ज मार्केट्स इंटरकनेक्टेड विद द वर्ल्ड, देन youngsters who are very impatient to go and build things and say that okay इसको commercialize किया जा सकता है, they will go and achieve the success. So like I said, कुछ भी serialize नहीं किया जा सकता. आप ये नहीं कह सकते यार पहले हम ये करेंगे, वो तो हम फिर वापस प्लानिंग वाले एरा में वापस चले जाएंगे. जो कम्युनिस्ट स्टेट्स थी जो प्लानिंग करती थी, अच्छा पहले हम फंडामेंटल बिल्ड करते हैं फिर हम उसके ऊपर कुछ और बिल्ड करेंगे. So free market allows you to work on all these things in parallel and it throws up the opportunities. तो अगर हम अपनी इकोनॉमिक्स फिक्स करेंगे तो ये सारी चीजें अपने आप फिक्स हो जाएंगी.
थैंक यू.
इसमें एक ही चीज मैं कहूँगा अभी कि बेसिकली वी आर मूविंग ग्रेजुअली इन द मैन्युफैक्चरिंग सेक्टर. यदि हम सिर्फ पावर सेक्टर की बात करें, आई डोंट हैव मच इन्फॉर्मेशन अबाउट द मेटी एंड अदर एरियाज. यहाँ पे काफ़ी सारे इक्विपमेंट अब ऑलमोस्ट 100% इंडिजिनस हो गया है. There are certain which is ranging from 50% to 80%. They are being targeted to see that the domestic content of that equipment also goes to 100% in a given time frame. उसकी भी grading हमने अभी दे दी है. Now there are still equipments which are yet to take off. जो अभी 78, 76 जो हम आपको बता रहे थे अभी, और उसका हम अभी कोशिश कर रहे हैं कि almost 20% से लेकर के how do we really reach to 100%. So there are at different stages of indigenization. But definitely we are targeting that all these equipments must be manufactured in India.
इट्स सेम की एग्री, मतलब जैसे प्राइमरी सेक्टर है उसमें भी सिलिकॉन की बहुत आवश्यकता रहेगी.
Absolutely.
अब सिलिकॉन पे जितना भी
पावर सेक्टर में हम इलेक्ट्रॉनिक भी काफी सारे यूज करते हैं, है ना. जैसे फॉर एग्जांपल मैंने आपको एक छोटा सा एग्जांपल दिया IGBT का. IGBT is again an electronic equipment which is right now we are taking from outside. We had the challenge here and we said nothing doing. Now there are Indian companies are going to manufacture this. So अभी L&T and Power Grid को collaboration करा करके उसको we have given them the task for 2 years and they need to develop in 2 years and commercialize. So similarly we are taking it up, right?
Thank you. Professor wanted to make a comment.
So let me divide up that answer into multiple parts. What was it? So the word microprocessor of course is no longer used, right? We don't really talk about microprocessors. Most of the current AI/ML all runs on GPUs. The architecture is very different from traditional microprocessors. So there is, for at least space and some of the other sectors, we have a fairly successful operation running at Semiconductor Complex Limited, Chandigarh, right, Mohali. So the plant at SCL produces some earlier generation microprocessors and produces chips for a variety of other things. There are of course similar other entities around the country, but most of the effort of what you're putting in the VLSI design space, the chip design space so to speak, most of it is design. The manufacturing, most countries, I'm not saying only India, most countries, Europe, US, in fact many of the earlier semiconductor manufacturing plants in the US shut down and are now producing solar panels, right? So most of the efforts around the world are fabless design houses, and India leads in that. So if you look at Bangalore, Pune, Hyderabad, and to some extent some in Noida, a very significant fraction of designs done for many of the smartphones are actually done within the country, almost 100%. In fact, some are actually really 100%. Complete design. That design is a major component of the cost of developing a new design. It's actually, the manufacturing is there, but most of the cost is really in the initial stage, really the the design cost. That's happening in the country. Scaling up the semiconductor design plant itself will take time, but you can see it's already rapidly happening. In the case of memories, flash memories and so on, there's already very large investment that's happened by a fairly prominent multinational in Gujarat and elsewhere. That's already taken off very well. Right? There are similar efforts that probably you will start hearing about their outcomes and outputs in the next 2 or 3 years or even less. So I think as far as the that space is concerned, the Indian engineers have it almost entirely covered. So I don't think that's a cause for worry. Right? I think the interlinking of these parts will happen, if you ask me, organically, because everything exists in one place.
Thank you.
With that, I would like to thank all of our panelists for spending so much time and answering everyone's questions. I would like to thank the organizers for letting us go 30 minutes over the time. And thank you so much. I'd like to invite the India Mission delegates to facilitate the panelists. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you to Subrat for all the moderation as well.
Thank you folks. Thank you, everybody.